Hi, I'm Michelle Visser, the author of Sweet Maple, the owner of SolelyRested.com, and the host of the Simple Doesn't Mean Easy podcast. I'm glad you're here today because this is a continuation of last week's video. I'll link that one below. But last week I made a pulled pork roast in the crock pot. And I had to make some Italian salad dressing for that recipe. At the time I promised you I would share the pulled pork recipe this week, so that's what we're doing. It is the absolute perfect dish to make during a busy week. It was a holiday week between Christmas and New Year's, and it's so easy. It's really simple. I love crock pot meals, and I love that it very easily makes extra. We had 2 meals from it, and I still had a few sandwiches worth of meat left over, which I'm using today to make Bill his lunch. But before we go any further, I have a favor to ask. Could you please hit the subscribe button? It makes a huge difference. Also, don't forget to read the description. I have a complete 8-page pantry checklist that if you don't have, you need in your life. And it also is full of discount codes to the absolute best ingredients, the ones that I stock my pantry with, the companies that I respect and love. Lots of discount codes and ways to save money on stocking up on these best ingredients that you can have in your pantry as well. So definitely see that in the description. I also am going to link to my complete list of pork recipes. We're pig farmers. Cooking pork is really important to me and making sure that people know how to do it well. So I'm going to link to my entire series of cooking your way through the pig down below, as well as this complete recipe. So now let's talk about pulled pork. So let's start with the cut of meat. The best cut of meat would either be a Boston butt or a pork shoulder. You can also do this very effectively with a pork loin cut and even other cuts. You can experiment and try it, but my favorite are those two, Boston butt and picnic shoulder. The shoulder is going to be a little fattier, so you're going to find that your sandwiches are a little greasier. Absolutely delicious, very moist, but that's the difference that I find between those two cuts. Nothing wrong with either option. They're both really good. Once you have your cut, you need about a 5-pound piece of one of those cuts. But if you have more than 5 pounds or smaller than 5 pounds, that's okay too. You can usually stick to the measurements I'm going to give you, and you might have a little extra sauce, but I have never had not enough sauce. Of course, if you're if you have a giant crock pot and you're gonna put 2 roasts in there, then go ahead and double your ingredients. Okay, so you put your cut in the crock pot and you add 2 things, guys. That's it. Sometimes I will season my meat, if I think of it. You could just use salt and pepper. I love using Redmond garlic salt. I also like using my pork rub. I will link that in the description as well. It's just a homemade maple rub that I often use on my different pork cuts for all different things. But you don't have to rub it. You really can just put the meat in the crock pot and add 2 things. You want to add 16 ounces of salad dressing. It could be balsamic vinaigrette. It can be purchased Italian dressing that you buy at the store. Before I learned how easy it was to make my own, and before I realized how bad the processed stuff was for our family, I would always buy the absolute cheapest no-name Italian dressing, and I would always keep them stocked in my pantry for this exact recipe. I have since learned how very easy it is to make your own. It's actually cheaper than buying the cheapest Italian dressing, and I always use my homemade Italian dressing now. But about 16 ounces of that, and only a 1/4 cup of sugar. I used to use just regular old brown sugar, and that's fine. Then once we were sugar makers, I started using maple syrup, which is a delicious option. Honey is a good option. But my favorite sugar to use is coconut sugar for this recipe. So I'll link my favorite source for the coconut sugar below. Also an article with more information about how you can choose the best sugar for your recipe and for your family. So 16 ounces of Italian dressing, a 1/4 cup of coconut sugar. Turn the crock pot on low for 8 to 10 hours, and then you simply pull it apart. The meat will fall apart for you. Stir it up in that wonderful sauce that you made with your 2 ingredients. And if you want to, add some Italian seasoning, some oregano, some salt and pepper, or some intentional, Italian seasoning stuff you can buy. But you don't have to. Again, that's optional. I often forget it, honestly. But you really can't mess this recipe up, and it's so good. So now I'm going to put together Bill's sandwich for his lunch to use up the rest of this amazing pulled pork. Okay, so straight out of the fridge, you will find that the fat separates, and you're going to have some not so great looking pork, but this is the good fat, guys. This is loaded with vitamin D. It is good for you. I'll leave a link about why the fat of pork is so very good for us. So I'm just going to mix this in and heat it up a little bit and put it on some bread. I'm gonna spread a little barbecue sauce on his rolls. I like it with horseradish sauce. Bill is so not a fan of horseradish, so he likes just barbecue sauce on his pulled pork sandwiches. I have more juices than I can use. That's okay. The dogs will love that in their dinner tonight.